History is filled with rulers remembered for their wisdom, their conquests, or their kindness. But then there are those remembered for something else entirely, their sheer unadulterated madness. And few names conjure up images of excess and depravity quite like the Roman Emperor Caligula. Ruling for just 4 short, chaotic years, his story has become a cautionary tale of absolute power corrupting absolutely. Today, we are going to peel back the layers of myth and history to explore 5 of the most shocking stories about Caligula that have been passed down through the ages. These tales, recorded by ancient historians, paint a picture so bizarre it's hard to believe. Let's journey back to ancient Rome and try to understand the man behind the monster. First up is the infamous tale of Caligula and his sisters. In ancient Rome, family was the bedrock of society, with strict rules governing relationships. But Caligula, it was said, saw these rules as mere suggestions. The historian Suetonius, writing decades after Caligula's death, made the scandalous claim that the emperor had inappropriate relationships with all 3 of his sisters, Agrippina the younger, Drusilla, and Julia Livilla. Drusilla was said to be his absolute favorite. He treated her not just as a sister, but almost as a wife, lavishing her with public honors typically reserved for an empress. When she died tragically, his grief was monumental. He declared her a goddess, the first Roman woman to receive such an honor, and enforced a period of public mourning so strict that laughing or bathing was punishable by death. This intense, and according to Roman sources, improper bond with his sisters was one of the first major red flags for the Roman elite, signaling that their new emperor didn't play by anyone's rules, but his own. Next, we dive into the bizarre world of Caligula's parties. These weren't your average Roman banquets. They were legendary spectacles of extravagance designed to shock and awe. Imagine feasts where the food itself was made of gold leaf, or where guests were served dishes of pearls dissolved in vinegar, simply to showcase the emperor's immense wealth. But the extravagance went beyond the menu. Caligula reportedly built a floating palace on Lake Nemi to enormous ships complete with marble floors, heating systems, and even gardens with fruit trees. These weren't warships. They were floating party barges dedicated to pleasure. Ancient writers claim these parties often descended into wild debauchery. Suetonius alleges that Caligula would force the wives and daughters of his high-ranking guests to attend these parties. He would then reportedly inspect them as if they were goods for sale, and take his chosen companions away in full view of their families. This wasn't just about personal gratification. It was a power move, a way of humiliating the Roman aristocracy, and reminding them that he, the emperor, was above all laws and social customs. Our third point delves into Caligula's strange and domineering approach to marriage. He was married 4 times in his short life, and each union was more tumultuous than the last. His relationships were often impulsive and driven by a desire to assert his power. The most famous example is his marriage to his 4th wife, Milonia Caesonia. According to the sources, he became infatuated with her even though she was neither young or particularly beautiful, and was already a mother to 3 daughters. He married her on the very day she gave birth to his own daughter. But his affection was terrifying. Suetonius writes that Caligula would often threaten her in a twisted form of endearment, saying he had the power to have her tortured or executed at any moment. He would also, disturbingly, parade her unclothed before his friends. This wasn't a partnership. It was a display of ownership. He treated his wife like a possession, a living symbol of his absolute authority over everyone, even those closest to him. This behavior further alienated the Roman elite, who saw his treatment of his own empress as a sign of deep instability and cruelty. Now for the story that has defined Caligula in popular culture, his relationship with his horse, Incitatus. This wasn't just a man who loved his steed. Caligula took it to a whole new level. Incitatus was no ordinary horse. He had a stable made of marble, a manger made of ivory, and was fed oats mixed with gold flakes. He wore a collar of precious jewels and purple blankets, the color of royalty. Guards were posted outside his stable to ensure his sleep was never disturbed. Caligula would even invite the horse to dine with him at official banquets, seating him at the table and offering him wine in a golden goblet. The ultimate act, and the one that sealed Caligula's reputation for insanity, was his alleged plan to make Incitatus a consul, one of the two highest elected officials in Rome. Now, historians debate whether he was serious. Was this the act of a madman, or a calculated political statement? Perhaps Caligula was mocking the senators, suggesting that his horse could do their job just as well, if not better. Either way, the message was clear. Caligula held the traditions and institutions of Rome in complete contempt. Finally, we come to Caligula's belief in his own divinity. Many Roman emperors were deified after their death, but Caligula couldn't wait. He demanded to be worshipped as a living god. He built temples dedicated to himself, and even had the heads of famous statues of gods, like Jupiter, replaced with his own likeness. He would dress up as various gods and goddesses, one day Apollo, the next Venus, and walk among the people, demanding they worship him. This went far beyond the normal imperial cult. He reportedly connected his own palace to the temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill with a bridge, so he could consult with the god directly. He even established a dedicated priesthood for his own cult, with the most expensive positions sold to the highest bidders. For the deeply religious Romans, this was the ultimate transgression. It was one thing to be a powerful emperor, but it was another entirely to declare yourself a god on earth. This supreme arrogance was likely the final straw that led to his downfall. So, what are we to make of these stories? Were they the literal truth, or exaggerated propaganda written by his enemies after his death? Historians like Suetonius and Cassius Dio wrote with a clear bias, eager to paint the emperors they disliked in the worst possible light. It's possible that Caligula's actions, while eccentric, were deliberately twisted into tales of madness. The story of making his horse a consul might have been a dark joke, a satirical jab at the Senate, which they took literally. His lavish spending and strange parties could have been a young, inexperienced ruler's attempt to project an image of power and limitless wealth. However, even if these stories are only half true, they paint a picture of a ruler who was dangerously unstable and utterly disconnected from his people and his responsibilities. Power, especially absolute power without checks and balances, can be a potent poison. Caligula's 4-year reign serves as a stark reminder of that. His story shows what can happen when a single individual with immense authority loses their grip on reality, leading to a legacy defined not by achievement, but by infamy. In the end, his behavior became so intolerable that his own guards, the Praetorian Guard, conspired against him and brought his reign to a bloody end. He was just 28 years old. The tale of Caligula remains a fascinating and terrifying chapter in Roman history, a lesson on the dark side of power that still resonates today. Thanks for watching. If you found this dive into ancient history interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the past. Let me know in the comments which historical figure you want to learn about next. See you in the next video.